I never imagined my life could break in such a quiet, cutting way. The day I realized I had been left out of the funeral, something inside me collapsed without a sound. Grief has many shapes, but this one felt like a cold hand closing around my chest. My name is Edith Marlowe. I am 74 years old, and I have lived in the small town of Willowbridge nearly all my life. A peaceful place, or at least it used to feel that way. My routines were simple. Morning tea near the window, a slow walk past the old pear tree, and evenings spent listening to the soft hum of the radio. I thought I understood my family even with their flaws and silences. But on that gray morning, as the church bell rang in the distance, I felt something was wrong. People walked past my house dressed in black, neighbors' familiar faces, yet none of them looked my way. Their steps were hurried, eyes lowered, as if avoiding a truth they didn't want to share. Then I overheard it. "They've started, but she doesn't know." My heart tightened. Who had died? And why had no one told me? I felt the floor of my life shift beneath me. It began with small things, the kinds of details most people would ignore but that settle into the heart like quiet warnings. 3 days before the funeral I hadn't known existed, my phone began to ring less. My daughter, Claire, who normally called me every evening, suddenly sent short, clipped messages. "Busy today. I'll explain later. We'll talk soon." But soon never came. There were whispers in the hallway when she visited, hushed conversations near the kitchen doorway, and glances exchanged with my son-in-law when they thought I wasn't looking. At first I convinced myself it was nothing. Families have secrets after all, but never secrets that hurt like this. Then on the afternoon before the funeral I noticed something strange. While dusting the desk in my living room, I found a sealed white envelope slightly tucked under a stack of old letters. My name wasn't on it. In fact, there were no names at all. Just the church's emblem pressed into the envelope flap. A sinking feeling crawled through my stomach. With trembling hands I opened it. Inside was a printed funeral program. My eyes scanned the page quickly until I reached the line that stopped my breath. "In loving memory of Daniel Marlowe. My son." The room spun. My fingers went numb. I checked every line, the date, the service time, the family acknowledgments. My name was nowhere. Not even listed among those who would deeply miss him. Then I saw the final line. "Arrangements provided by Claire Dawson." My own daughter. My lips parted but no sound escaped. Why would she hide this from me? I didn't sleep that night. The funeral program sat on my bedside table like a wound that refused to close. Every time I closed my eyes I saw my son's face, and then the empty space where my name should have been. By morning the tension in the house felt heavier than the storm clouds gathering outside. Claire came by briefly, dropping her coat on the chair with movements too sharp, too rehearsed. "Did you sleep well, Mom?" she asked, her voice oddly gentle. I stared at her, searching her face. "Claire, is there something you want to tell me?" Her eyes flicked away. "Later. I have errands." She was gone before I could speak. Hours passed. My heart wouldn't rest. Something inside me demanded answers. Answers that had been quietly avoided for days. So I searched. I checked the mail drawer first. Then the kitchen cabinet she'd tidied earlier in the week. And finally, the small wooden box she thought I never used. Inside it were folded notes, several of them. One read, "We can't tell her. She won't handle it." Another, "Better for her not to know the truth." And a third, scribbled quickly, almost desperate, "She'll break if she hears what he did." My breath caught. What he did? What were they hiding from me? Just as I stood frozen holding those notes, the front door creaked open. Claire walked in, stopping when she saw the papers in my hand. Her face drained of color. "Mom, you weren't supposed to see those." Her voice trembled. And for the first time I saw something in her expression, not guilt, but fear. I felt the notes shaking in my hand as I faced her. Why wasn't I told about the funeral? My voice cracked, raw and brittle. Why was I left out of saying goodbye to my own son? Claire stared at the floor. Her breathing quickened. The silence stretched painfully between us. "Mom, please," she whispered, stepping closer. "I was trying to protect you." "Protect me." The words tasted bitter. From what? From grief. From my own child's death. Finally she looked up. Tears gathered in her eyes but didn't fall. "It's not the funeral," she said in a trembling voice. "It's the truth behind it." I froze. "What truth?" She swallowed hard. "Daniel, he wasn't the man you thought he was. There were things he hid from you. Things he did before he died. And when I found out, I didn't want you to remember him that way." The room felt smaller. The walls seemed to press inward. I shook my head. No. Daniel wasn't perfect, but he was my son. I deserved to know everything, good or bad. She covered her mouth with her hands. A broken sound escaped her. Then she whispered the line that would haunt me for days. "Mom, he didn't die peacefully. He chose to leave us." My world fractured in one violent, silent moment. The room spun. My lungs forgot how to breathe. No, that can't be true. My voice dissolved into trembling gasps. "Claire, why didn't you tell me?" She sobbed, collapsing to her knees. "Because I couldn't bear to watch you shatter." But I already was. For 2 days after the confrontation, I barely moved from my bed. Rain drummed steadily against the window, an echo of the hollow ache inside me. But grief eventually gives way to questions. And questions lead to truth. I needed to know more, not filtered, not softened, but real. So I visited Daniel's apartment with the spare key he'd given me years ago. Dust covered the furniture. His scent lingered faintly in the air, like an old memory refusing to fade. I searched through drawers, shelves, files. Then I found it. A sealed envelope addressed to me, yet never delivered. Inside was a letter. Daniel's handwriting unmistakable. "Mom, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. I've made terrible mistakes. Mistakes I kept hidden because I didn't want to disappoint you. Claire found out. She tried to help me, but it was too late." My hands trembled as I continued. "There was someone who needed protection, not you, but her. I wanted to tell you the truth myself, but I couldn't. I hope someday you forgive the way things look." At the bottom was a line written shakily. "My biggest regret is leaving you with questions instead of answers." And behind that letter was another document. A legal paper. Claire was the one who arranged everything, because Daniel had appointed her to handle all final decisions. Not out of betrayal, but because he trusted her to shield me from the darkest parts of his last days. My knees buckled. The truth wasn't what I feared. It was something far more complicated. I sat on the floor of Daniel's quiet apartment, his letters scattered around me like fragments of a life I thought I understood. For the first time since he passed, I allowed myself to cry, deeply, openly, painfully. I cried for the boy he once was. I cried for the man he became. I cried for the secrets he carried alone. For the burden placed on Claire. For the final decisions made without me. The guilt crept into my heart like a slow-moving shadow. Had I been too distant? Too naive? Too hopeful? Had Daniel felt he couldn't come to me? Rain tapped softly on the window glass, like gentle fingers offering comfort. I closed my eyes and let the grief run its course. And beneath the pain, a strange sense of understanding slowly bloomed. His choices, Claire's silence, the hidden funeral, they weren't punishments. They were attempts, misguided but sincere, to protect me from a truth too heavy for an old woman's heart. I pressed the letter to my chest. "I'm so sorry, my boy," I whispered through tears. "I wish you had told me. I wish you had stayed." When I returned home, Claire was waiting on the porch, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, eyes swollen from crying. I walked toward her slowly. She stood up. "Mom, I never meant to hurt you." "I know," I whispered. For a moment, neither of us moved. The air held its breath with us. Then I opened my arms. She collapsed into them, sobbing against my shoulder. And in that fragile embrace, something in both of us began to mend. Things didn't magically return to normal. Pain like this doesn't disappear. It settles into the quiet corners of life, becoming part of the landscape of memory. But we talked. We shared. We allowed the truth to exist between us without fear. Claire told me everything. I listened without breaking. Days passed and the wound softened. Healing didn't come quickly, but it came honestly. As I sat by the window one evening, watching the last light fade into dusk, I whispered the closing words of my story. Be careful who you trust, even the ones closest to your heart. And sometimes, be grateful for the ones who carry your pain when you can't.